3 tips in today's episode to make sure you are improving your sparring skills if you're a beginner and struggling to make that progress you want. Look, I have been in that zone where you're like, okay, my skill level is improving. My techniques are feeling really good, shadow boxing, bag work, anything like that. It's feeling on point, but then you get in and you spar and you feel like if you're this good in all the other stuff in sparring, you're here. You're like, how do I make that transition from my skill level being way up high when I just freestyle to when I spar and all of a sudden I'm not able to do anything, or at least it feels like that. With the tips I'm gonna give you today, hopefully you will see that skill level bump up in a relatively short period of time. And of course, guys, you see these awesome shin pads, which I'm rocking right now from XMartial, $65, plus you have 10% off with my promo code Gabriel Varga. Be sure to check that out if you're in the market for some new shin guards. My very first tip for you is all about the mindset. Because I've had so many people, especially when I do my Zoom privates, and I'm talking with people around the world, and they say, what should my mind be doing when I'm in the sparring session? Should it be going, okay, if they throw the low kick, I'm gonna check. If they throw the front kick, I'm gonna scoop. If I want to attack, I have to get my head off the center line. Like, are you trying to keep all of that in mind? No, the answer is no. You don't want to be doing that. You want to enter somewhat of a flow state where you're just kind of in front of the person, you're reacting to what they throw, and maybe you're testing them out, probing a little bit, and then going into your best attacks. That's the easiest way to start. Of course, entering that flow state is much easier said than done. So how are we going to go about doing this as a beginner? Well, number one, you need to focus in on the things you are best at. As you get better and better and you get more confident, of course, then we can move in things we're weaker on. But initially, what are you best at? So if you're great at a high guard, lock those hands to your head. If you're great at, let's say, a front kick, then stop them as they approach. That's your initial move. Stop them. Guard up. And if you're great, let's say, at a right round kick, blast it in lots. Make that your primary offense. Maybe you disguise it behind a jab, but you stick with the basics. And you're just trying to get comfortable with flowing through just those things. And you might have moments where you're like, oh, you know what? I can do more than that. And I'm going to step in and throw a cross hook. But when you try to do too much stuff and your brain is overwhelmed and you're outside that flow state, your sparring is going to feel like a struggle. So simplify, I guess, is a summary of what I just said. My next tip for you is to throw one of the safest techniques and get it into your arsenal so that you can feel like you're having some success landing. Many people feel like they're not getting good at sparring because they're not landing. And if you choose hard techniques to throw, you're like, oh, when I throw my round kicks, I'm gonna aim up at head level. Yeah, you're gonna have trouble landing. So let's go to one of the more simple techniques. Safe to protect yourself, but high probability of landing. What is that technique? It's a low kick. I keep my hands up, I throw my low kick. Somebody attacks me, I block, I throw my low kick. If you start getting that into your arsenal, you're gonna start either chopping people down or have them check, which then gives you the option at least to follow up while they're on one foot, or fake and follow up. You might have a little bit more confidence to expand out and try other things. But if you're struggling, you're like, man, I just can't get the offense going the way I want, work off that low kick. Because you don't have to worry about, oh, do I get my head off the center line as I throw? Do I swing? Am I doing all that? Because even that is extra thought process, which might overwhelm you. You just think, hands are gonna stay up. Move around, little fake, hands stay up. They attack, block, block, hands are up, chop back with the low kick. All of that in itself is just gonna be simple. And like I said on the previous point, we wanna keep things simple. One basic technique, if you don't have your own favorite already, then you make the low kick it. You start trying to land that time and time and time again in the rounds. And there might come a point, hopefully, where you get so bored with that you decide, you know what, I'm gonna throw another technique in there. And that's what we want you to do. We want you to have success and then challenge yourself a little bit more. and then challenge yourself a little bit more, and eventually you won't be a beginner anymore. You'll hit that intermediate stage. My last tip for you today in terms of sparring is to really dial in on your footwork. But here's the mistake that a lot of beginners make. Let's say this poster here is my opponent. People decide, okay, I'm gonna do footwork. And they stay way out here, way out of range. And at this point, what does footwork really do? Like the further I am away from somebody, and I think, oh, I'm gonna cut an angle, you're so far away, there's no threat. All the person in front of you has to do is, like, even if you're moving fairly quick, you're on the outside, you're like, oh, all this person is doing is that. So the footwork really only comes into play when we're at a closer distance. But so many beginners, they get so far away and they waste so much energy moving around. And I watch them like, man, you're not even close to your opponent. So the footwork is great. You should prioritize it. But you also want to make sure that you're in that good punch range. Don't forget about the footwork. That's something else that a lot of beginners mistake. They stand here. Or they're way back here all over the place. Find that middle ground. Find that middle ground, stay moving, stay mobile, but then if you cut that angle and the person hasn't adjusted, then you give them that shot. Footwork is such a key element. Beginners just often are using it incorrectly. They don't understand range yet. They don't understand distance. That is something to add into your arsenal or your understanding, knowing that here, I'm no real threat. Here, my kicks start to become a threat. Here, my hands start to become a threat. You want to understand all these ranges. But until you get to that point, just being like, okay, I'm just going to get the footwork down, but a little closer. That'll give you a massive degree of success, which you probably have not had, and hopefully will stop you from feeling like you're running. Because being too far away is essentially just running. Lots of movement, but serving no purpose. So those 3 tips there, I think if you implement them for the next month, you're gonna feel like, oh, I'm finally having some good success and moving to that intermediate stage of sparring or skill level. That's all. That's all we're talking about today, everybody. Thank you for joining me. As always, train hard. I will see you back here soon for another video.